Okay, and I'll go ahead and start the recording because I know several people aren't able to make the call, and I know one new committee member, Mamiko Nakata, she's in Japan, and so it is the middle of the night there.
Oh, sorry.
Bless you.
Thank you.
I hope you're not going to catch a cold with all the rain you now have in California.
I hope not.
I've heard of a lot of people who did, or flu.
We had a person, down the street from us who got killed by a tree.
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Wow.
Been all over the news. She was taking a walk on a golf course and a tree knocked her down.
Oh.
And a different community than where I live, but on the same main road. So yeah, rain is wonderful, but I never thought it was a little tree too, but.
That's tragic.
Yes.
Actually, that happened here too. A eucalyptus fell on a car.
Oh wow, yes.
Everything's so soft now, not holding the ground.
Well, it's a few minutes past 3, and I see Rob Griffin was able to join us. So, Judy and Richard, should we go ahead and get started?
Okay. How about you, Richard?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Judy, do you want to take point, and I'll chime in as
Sure.
needed?
Okay. Welcome, everyone, to your very first meeting of the Standards Professional Council. I'm Judith O'Loughlin, and I am the chair through the 2017 convention in Seattle. And so I'd like you to each introduce yourselves, beginning with Richard.
Hi, I'm Richard Streck. I'll be the incoming chair following Judy.
Hello, I'm Sylvia Laborde, and I'm the board liaison.
I'm Colleen Gallagher, a new member, and I'm in Dayton, Ohio.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Hey, Robert, are you here? Andrea?
Yes, hi, I'm Andrea Hellman from Springfield, Missouri.
And this is DJ Kaiser from St. Louis, Missouri.
And this is Tabitha Kidwell in Washington, D.C.
And this is Natalie Coleman in San Diego, California.
I don't think Jennifer's here, but I'm not sure.
I'm Cristina Marrero in Bogota, Colombia.
Welcome. Long way.
I'll be next door to you in 2 weeks.
Oh, really? Where?
I'll be in Ecuador.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and is Jane here? Oh, yes, here she is. Welcoming Jane Sowers.
And Reza's here too.
And Reza, yeah, I saw his name on the list. Welcome, Reza. And the person who's organized this session is John Segota, our staff partner. And I'm not sure if Valerie is still out on maternity leave, but Valerie is our other staff partner, and they are wonderful supports to us, along with Sylvia, to the work that we do, both during the convention and throughout the year. John, would you go back to the first slide so
Sure.
we can just go over the agenda? The things we're going to look at today are, and I'm sure John has sent these to you, you have the Standards Professional Council Manual as an orientation. We are now connected through my TESOL, through which John sent us the information to log in, and information will come through My TESOL, the new platform that TESOL is using. And John indicated to us earlier that anything that goes up on My TESOL or is an attachment actually goes into our library. So you can check out information, historical information, as well as new information going forward on My TESOL. The third item, which John will, I believe, talk to, are current initiatives, which include the TESOL CAEP standards revision about reviews of preparation programs for training teachers to teach English language learners, and the TESOL program and product inventory that we currently have available to us and under the things that we review and discuss. The next item will be things related to the convention, and actually when we all meet at the convention, that will put a face to a name and to a voice that we hear today, and I'm looking forward to meeting everyone. And finally, the last item of today's business is anything related to new business. Okay. Richard, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I really don't. We're very much looking forward to what we're going to do. We have a really interesting group of people coming, many from the people starting up new with us, and we're really excited at the group that's here and the diversity of it and the backgrounds of the people. We went through quite a long list of people who wanted to be on this committee. And we're really excited about everybody who's here, so looking forward to working with everybody.
Okay. Right, so what each of you should have received is the standards. SPC means Standards Professional Council Procedural Manual. And if you look up here carefully, you will see how, and thanks to John and Valerie and Sylvia for all the hard work on working on this manual that really helped Richard and myself really get started, since this is a brand new product that we are using to guide us, and it's a very important product that you should read very carefully. In part one, I think, you know, reading the council charter is important for all of you to look at. But I think really reviewing the roles and responsibilities about what each of our jobs are on this council, and you know, we're really thrilled that you're volunteering and want to become involved with the council this year. So if you will take a little bit of time to, before we meet in March, to review what your role is and your responsibility and your rights as a council member are. The next part is about our general calendar and schedule of activities and what's unique about our particular council, and then particularly the roles and responsibilities of the chair, incoming chair, and council members, and what our board liaison and staff partners do for us. And we're very lucky to have Sylvia as our board liaison, because Sylvia was the chair of this, this was called a committee in the past, who was my predecessor, and I generally definitely appreciate all the work that she did going forward and to help me acclimate to be on this council.
Thank you. Thank you, Judy.
You're welcome.
And welcome to all the new members.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you,
And
Sylvia.
finally, really, there's an organizational chart that's been worked on by the board of directors and the staff at TESOL and presented to all of the members in various venues over the past 2 conferences, including a mission, vision, statements, values, and a strategic plan going forward. And many other parts of TESOL are involved in revising and revisiting parts of how TESOL operated before and how it's going to operate going forward. And so as a member of TESOL, I'm sure that beyond just the SPC, you've received information about your particular interest section or your affiliate or something else happening at TESOL. Okay. Richard, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I don't think so. I think that pretty much covers what we need to do.
Okay. Is it you, John?
Yeah, I can just quickly cover this. This is, so as Judy mentioned, this is just a screenshot from the MyTESOL platform, which was launched at the beginning of November. And so hopefully everyone has had a chance to interact with it in some way. As Judy mentioned, the Standards Council has its own group within MyTESOL, and each of you were added to that automatically as you became members of the council. And so information about the council, our meetings, any documents will be sent through here as a primary course of action. So when you receive the welcome message welcoming you to the council, welcoming you to this group within MyTESOL, there should have been reference to the procedure manual, which Judy just highlighted. So all that is within here, and you should have also received, we have put together sort of an FAQ visual guide on how to work within the platform. So that's also within the library. But if any of you have any difficulties sort of interacting with the library, that you're maybe missing messages or you're having trouble accessing something, please don't hesitate to reach out to either myself or to Valerie to either help guide you through that or figure out, maybe that sometimes because the messages come from an email address that isn't directly from our office, sometimes your institution may have very sensitive spam filters, for example, and may see it as something other than legitimate email. So that does happen from time to time, but the vendor through which this has been facilitated is usually very, very good about making sure that none of their messages or the information that that is sent out through this platform is labeled as spam. But hopefully if you've been able to access it, you've been able to sort of navigate it, understand how it's set up, and find the information that you've needed.
And I also wanted to add that in terms of some of the things I was looking for, Michelle Kim also was very helpful, and she sends out information on MyTESOL for various different things.
Did you have any, I think just while we're here, does anybody have any particular questions about MyTESOL now that it's been up and running for a few months? Has everyone been able to access it okay and get the information they needed?
I have a very silly note, but important nonetheless, that it would be nice for, this is Sylvia, by the way, and I didn't mention that I'm in Montevideo, Uruguay, in South America. So closer to Christina, I guess. Hi, Christina.
Hi, yes.
Okay, that it would be nice maybe to complete the profiles and have a photograph. It makes it, easier to interact than, with the gray silhouette that we have there. So, again, just something to help communication, I guess.
Thank you, Sylvia. Yes, I think we definitely want to encourage everyone to complete their online profiles as they can.
And I think that's a great comment, because one of the things I do like about MyTESOL is it personalizes the communication that you see, especially in the message boards. And an opportunity might be to have a photo booth at TESOL so that you can have your photo taken digitally to help you. A lot of companies do this where they just have a photographer take a professional shot for you, that you can add that to your LinkedIn, but we could do this specifically for MyTESOL.
That would be wonderful. What a great idea, DJ.
That is
Love
a great
it.
idea.
Thank
That's
you.
a nice idea. I think a lot of us, this is Rob Griffin. I was finally able to get in. Thank you, John, for sending that email. I'll check my email as well, because I somehow didn't get all of the information from about the meeting. But I haven't really gone into MyTESOL yet. I will do so. And I think maybe at the next conference we'll be able to hear a little bit more about it as well.
Great. I'm glad you're able to get in, log in and everything, Robert.
Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for that suggestion, DJ. I'll pass it along to our conference team. I know every year that we do have some kind of display that's labeled as sort of a photo opportunity where people can take selfies or photos to say, you know, I was in Seattle, I was in Baltimore. So I'll check to see about the feasibility of getting some kind of, you know, camera photographer set up to can help with like photos that can be used online. Okay. So any other questions or comments about my TESOL?
Just an additional thing that if you click on the TESOL 2017, there are links to the whole program and the whole structure of the conference, so that you have a sense of everything that's going to happen at the conference. I think this is one of the nicest things that TESOL does, is helps you navigate the conference, not only for your professional development, but for any other information you need.
Great, thank you. Okay, so let's move on to the next part.
Sounds good.
Great. So yes, I suggested to Judy and Richard that I can cover this piece, and this is primarily just sort of an update. Those of you who've been on the council know that this has been an ongoing project. But for those of you who are new to the council, this is one of the current standards initiatives that the association is undertaking right now. And this slide just provides a brief snapshot, very brief description of CAEP, if you're not already familiar with the Council for the Accreditation of Educator Preparation. The way CAEP is structured is it works with different associations that represent different subject matter expertise in education, and those groups develop the standards that are then used by CAEP in their accreditation process for the teacher preparation programs in the United States. And so, of course, TESOL represents the TESOL field of expertise, and the standards we have developed, they've been using for their national recognition process. And I know this is, I know Natalie in particular knows a great deal of information about this because this is an area she has been heavily involved with over the years. And I think it's extremely, and the standards have to be revised every several years, and so we're at that time right now. And this is just a brief snapshot of the project timeline. Just to recap quickly, and again, this is for those who are new to the council, the project was started last, really going back to last April, June of last year, when we started planning internally and figuring out how we were going to put this together, and we decided to use a similar process that had been used for the recent development of the standards for short-term TESOL TEFL programs, of which, and that particular project, both Natalie and Reza were very much involved with. But where we would hire an expert writer or writers that would work with an expert group to develop the standards. So an expert group was identified, and we brought in a pair of writers to work with them. And rather than sort of walk through everything right now, the most recent phase that has happened in late October, an initial draft of the standards was shared with select groups. The Standards Council was one of them, to provide feedback on this first draft. And it was the Standards Council, it was the Board of Directors, the Professional Development Council, I think maybe one or two other councils, and a small select group of individuals. And we received a lot of feedback, and a lot of feedback from the Standards Council. and the expert group since then took some time reviewing the comments, and they've had several discussions on making changes to the standards and revising the draft. And I know there was a lot of the feedback suggested a lot of changes, and there's been a lot of changes that have been made. And in fact, by the end of today, I should receive from the writers the second draft. So our goal right now is to have the second draft completed and prepared for a second round of feedback and comment, and this one is for the public at large. So we've tended to historically have this sort of two-step process here within TESOL International Association, where when new standards are developed, the first round is a select group within the association, usually the board, of course the Standards Council, and maybe a few other groups, get to see that first draft. And then based on their feedback, it's revised, and then the second draft is prepared, and that's the one that is open for public feedback. So as I said, our goal is to have that completed and ready for public feedback by the end of this month, and the comment period will probably be about 3 weeks until about mid-February. And when it is sent out for public feedback, the Standards Council, you'll receive first notification. We will send it out to we'll send out notice out to the entire membership. We'll have notifications in several of our newsletters, TESOL Connections, the English Language Bulletin. We will be sending out information to all the affiliates to share, all the TESOL affiliates to share that with their members. We do have contact information for programs who are currently recognized by CAEPs. We will be disseminating information there. We want to get as much input into that draft as possible. Hopefully all the feedback will say the second draft looks fantastic. It needs no changes, fingers crossed. But in case it's not quite there, that feedback is critically important to make sure that we make any subsequent changes to get this right. And then the eventual goal is to have a final version prepared that the board of directors will vote on to approve in April, and have that done electronically in April. And then from there we follow up with CAEP, and there's a little bit of back and forth, but we need to submit it to CAEP by September, because then their board will meet I believe in October for its approval of the standards. And my understanding of the timeline from there is that if the passes, to repeat it, let me back up a little bit. The last time we went through a revision, there was a year-long period of sort of transition where if a program was going through national recognition or renewing its accreditation, in that transition period, I guess they had the option of either using the new standards or the old standards, and then after that year they'd use the new ones.
Yeah, there was a grandparenting time because, and plus all of those that had recognition with conditions also had to be given a grandparenting time because they came under the old ones, and it was kind of messy for a couple of years to get that all sorted out.
Right. Yeah, Natalie, I worked on one of those too a number of years ago, that they were given conditional, and then as things change, that would almost mean that the particular file would have to start all over again, and that was inappropriate.
Yeah, no, you couldn't have them do that. But that was back in 2009, I think, the last time we revised them.
Mm-hmm.
That's correct. Yes. Now, I just wanted to quickly mention, and especially extend my thanks to those council members who provided their feedback in the first round, because it was extremely helpful. It was very substantive, and I know that the expert group working on the draft really appreciated the feedback from this council in particular. It was very helpful in helping to clarify some important questions they had, And I think I can say, as I've observed the process, as they were developing that first draft, there was sort of a lot of, do we say it this way, do we go this way? And the feedback from the Standards Professional Council in particular really helped kind of guide the direction they need to go. So thanks again for all of you who took the time to provide the feedback in this very important project.
Yeah, John, I assume that there'll be a session at TESOL on the revised standards for additional or final input?
Yes. Yes, there certainly will be. Yeah, it's something that's on the, I don't have the exact time off the top of my head. All I can tell you, it'll be either March 22nd, 23rd, or 24th.
That's safe.
Yeah, I can guarantee it'll be one of those days.
Yeah. I think we should also mention about Diane Steer-Fenner, who was the TESOL director for the CAEP for the last, how long? 8-10 years, something like that.
Something like, yes.
She was phenomenal in what she was able to do.
Yes, yeah. Diane Steer-Fenner, I've been working with TESOL for that, and she's contributing. She's one of the writers on this project. Diane is actually stepped down from her role just recently as our CAEP coordinator, and and Anita Bright, who has been part of our CAEP activities recently, has stepped in to succeed Diane. So we're very excited to work with Anita. But Diane's been a great help and continues to be a great help moving forward. So we're very lucky.
May I ask a quick question?
Please.
Okay, this is Jane Sowers, and I was looking at the April one. The final draft provided to, is it the TESOL board?
Yes, it is.
Board?
It is the TESOL board. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. That should have been clearer.
Okay.
What I will do is after the call, I'll post these slides to my TESOL group in the library, but I'll make sure to make that change before we do that.
Well, thank you.
Now, as we were talking about CAEP, I know DJ, you had some when we last talked, you had some questions about process, because if I recall correctly, your program is sort of going to be in that window period. You have to submit some initial information later this year.
We have to.
Right.
We are nationally accredited. We have national recognition. We need to submit by September 15 of this year in order to maintain it. That's our timeline for CAEP accreditation.
Okay.
So I think that will be something that, along with the standards when they go out, is if they can include a timeline to let people know how this works for a first submission and also for a resubmission.
I think that the way it worked before when we did it, and I assume it's the same, is that if you're submitting in September, obviously it's impossible for you to use the new standard. So you'd come under the old ones, and any conditions you have to meet would also remain with the old standards. Only once CAEP has approved the standards and it comes back to TESOL would any new submissions, so it wouldn't be until the following, whenever the next submission date is. I think it's only once a year now. Is that right, John?
I believe so.
Yeah, and so you couldn't possibly be expected to both write to the new standards and collect data and submit it all at the same time. So it's probably a year away anyway before the new ones get implemented.
I think there may be 2 submission dates per year. I want to say it's September 15th and March 15th.
That's what it always was, but I know it changed. And also, as I said, if it's conditions, it can go in at a different time. Maybe they've changed it again because I haven't kept track since I got off the committee a couple of years ago.
The new timeline for SPA submissions is they must be done 3 years prior to when your EPP, your School of Education, goes up for your accreditation visit.
Right, yeah. So that would make it impossible for anyone who's going to be approved by CAEP in the next 2 years, I guess, to use the new standards. So it's a phase-in.
Next 3, actually, because we have a 2020 visit, so that's why we've got to do the 2017 submission.
Yeah.
Right. But that feedback is very helpful, DJ. And in fact, recall that this is something the council talked about with the first draft, is that there was some supplemental information that would be helpful to provide when the draft is shared about the, sort of contextual questions, if you will, like what is the timeline, how does this impact programs, because as you pointed out, since you are with a nationally recognized program already, you're going to be viewing whatever draft, you're going to be viewing it through that lens.
Right.
So to have that information that was very helpful feedback.
And this only applies, or primarily applies to the U.S., although there have been some other places that have tried to get approval from CAEP.
Well, and Natalie Coleman's written on that process a lot, so.
Oh, that's true. Yes, I am. I was one of the lucky ones that got to be there from day one.
That's great.
This is Jane again. Diane and I had talked a couple years ago about going under first grade, so teachers of preschool and kindergarten also having standards for them. Do these standards include that, or they start at first grade elementary?
Before they started at kindergarten.
Okay, so they do start at kindergarten.
No, actually, I think they say pre-K-12.
Yeah, it's P12. Yeah.
Okay, well that's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Great.
We made a. I don't think I included the slide of. Let me see. I didn't include on this one, but there is on the expert panel that is working on these standards. There is an early childhood expert.
Oh, good.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Okay.
Oh, and I should amend that the standards have been adapted in other countries, as some of you know, such as Uruguay, right, Sylvia?
Yeah, absolutely. I was just going to say that. I was unmuting my mic to say that.
I got to spend a lot of time in Uruguay.
Yeah.
And another thing that may be helpful when this goes out is to help people understand what are changes in our concept of the field that have helped shape these new standards. So I know we talked about this when we had our breakout meeting to look at these, and one of them was that they had a specialist in early childhood. So it appears that early childhood is informing these more. I noticed that the new standards are also informed by the needs of students who qualify for special education or that may qualify.
Right.
So
That's
just
important.
alerting people to what are some of these new things that are there. People tend to agree more with, yes, I agree that as a field we need to go this direction, but people often balk at new standards or changing standards when they're comfortable with them. But when they understand the direction we're going, that resistance usually goes away.
Well, Diane and I helped the Department of Ed in Illinois develop new standards. And there was so much resistance because they didn't have time to teach new things. That was always the argument we kept hearing. So
That's sad.
yes.
That's almost every state, though.
Yes. Well, then perhaps you need to think about a different way of teaching.
Good point.
Excellent point.
I didn't say that to them.
Yeah, off the record. Okay. Okay, but thank you for the additional feedback. To your point, DJ, yes, that I totally agree, and I know the first draft, as you know, was pretty skeletal. It really was just sort of the standards and the components. The goal is for the second draft, when it's shared, is to have that rationale piece, and not only the revisions that have been made, but to have that rationale and the explanations to provide that context. But I take your point very well.
Yeah. What is there going to be something like what Fred Genesee and Candace Harper did for the last draft? An introduction that talks about, since I'm new on the committee, I haven't seen it. So that will have a justification, research-based, and all of that for the new standards?
There will, yes, there will be. I think what will be. Let me back up a little bit. What we're talking about doing is providing enough information that we want people to weigh in on for the second draft that includes the rationale and everything. Mm-hmm. That there might be additional information available in the final publication, if you will, that when the standards are finalized and people start using them, and we will certainly have that kind of like even a supplemental introductory piece like that. Mm-hmm. But that particular element, for example, may not be in this draft that goes out. But I'm fairly certain that I just don't have my notes in front of me right now, that we do want to make sure that the second draft that goes out does provide that kind of explanation, rationale, enough citations to point, like, this is the reason why these what has been gone into writing this, and what is the explanation for these standards, the rationale for these standards, like from the writers themselves, as opposed to with what you referenced, Natalie, was sort of bringing in like a supplemental expert voice to add to that.
Well, Candace was on our committee, so I mean, she was part of it, but she and Fred wrote it. But I found it extremely helpful, particularly for things like what DJ was saying about explaining to people why we needed to make it, or what happened in Illinois to make the changes. Mm-hmm. And that just seemed to be extremely helpful. And for people who were just interested to read the background and the research, they were able to use it for other things as well. Mm-hmm. I think it serves a good purpose, however you decide to do it.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. It does. I think it serves a valuable purpose. We may not have something like that in place by the time the second draft is released for public feedback, but that is something we would definitely want to have, to your point, in the final version for that is available for public consumption when the standards are completed.
Yeah, I think the same was true with the one that Fred and Candace did. I think we didn't have it until towards the end. Mm-hmm.
And even if it's a short paragraph or even a bullet list of here's some major new things that have informed these, that could be sufficient to ward off a backlash, because I think that's what everyone wants to avoid.
Absolutely.
Certainly.
Hey, John, this is Rob Griffin again. I think we've been talking mostly about the P through 12 standards. I was dealing a lot with the short-term sort of standards and assessment tool this past summer, and I think the same conversation that you're having here could certainly apply to some of the other standards that TESOL is involved with, such as with the teacher education programs. Are you referring primarily here to the P through 12? I'm sorry if I'm a little bit clueless. I'm new to the council as well.
That's okay. Yeah, I mean the context right now. Yeah, we're talking specifically about this the TESOL CAEP standards revision.
Okay.
Which is we've had been referred to in recent years as the TESOL P12 Professional Teaching Standards. Just that, based on the feedback we received, especially from this council, that's that term is under discussion. So.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, but Rob, I do appreciate your feedback. That's actually helpful. If we unless there's any questions about these standards, we can move on to the next piece, which is actually very, very new, and Rob's point is very applicable.
Sorry, I wasn't trying to rush anyone. I just wasn't.
Oh no, it's fine.
Here.
but I mean, while we're here, were there any other questions about the TESOL CAEP P12 standards?
No.
Okay, so the next piece, this is referred to in the outline as the program and product inventory. This is, I asked to put this on the agenda because this is something we've been working on internally quite a bit, and this is something that the Standards Council will have a very important role in. And so what I have on the screen here is just by way of a little bit of background, some of you may be familiar with Myrna Jacobs, who started at TESOL a little over 2 years ago as our new publication and product development director. And one of her goals has been to really get a sense of all of the specifically publications, but more broadly, all the different kinds of things that TESOL, the association, produces, and kind of take this, sort of an inventory about what's there and get a sense of what is the lifespan of the different programs and products. Are there gaps in sort of TESOL's inventory? Are there things that might need to be refreshed, revised? Are there things that may need to be sunset? And in planning for this, she was able to identify a framework that we're adapting from actually a couple different sources. And what you have on your screen now is sort of a strategic view of that process. And this is something we've been talking a lot about internally, and we're moving to start unrolling this. And this is something it actually fits well with the transition that has happened between the committees to the professional councils, because all the professional councils, such as the Standards Council, have a very key role to play in this. So just the snapshot of the process here, it starts simply with doing this inventory. And that's something that staff will do, of taking this inventory of all the different kinds of publications and programs and products and services. We're assembling that right now, the framework for that. One of the things as we're looking at it is trying to, how we're going to categorize certain things. For example, this would be inclusive of the virtual seminars that TESOL provides to members, and we usually provide about a dozen a year. But in looking at that, do we want to identify each single individual virtual seminar as a different topic, or do we want to sort of do virtual seminars as a product category, since each offering tends to be unique and sort of a one-off on its own? For publications, for example, we have a number of series of edited series of publications and a lot of individual volumes. In terms of the standards, we have several different sets of standards, and some of those have ancillary volumes. But for example, the standards we were just talking about, the CAEP standards, we have the standards themselves. Excuse me. There is an ancillary volume that Natalie happened to work on that's connected to that. We have other standards that are just sort of its own volume, and that's it. But really wanted to start out with doing this inventory approach of just really mapping everything out and figuring out how we're going to look at each thing. And then the next step is to do an evaluation of each. And this is the first part where the professional councils will come in. So once we've identified everything and identified the categories and how we're going to view them, we have an inventory tool which we've developed and adapted from a couple of different sources. And I don't have that here because I don't want to necessarily get into the details of this. This will be sort of a follow-up conversation. But there's two components to that. One is a series of quantitative questions, sort of a rating scale. And a lot of that has to do, some of those questions have to do with, how is this particular program or product performed over time? And that will be like, internal numbers and so forth. So that's something the staff will handle. But then there's a qualitative element to that as well that says, like, looking at this particular product, and I'll keep using that term, what are the beneficial factors to it in terms of its strategic position for the association, how well is it seen in the field, and what are some of the perhaps negative factors, like is there a lot of competition? Are we just sort of one of many voices that offers this, or do other groups do the same kind of thing and better than TESOL? To really kind of get a sense of that. And I think that'll be the first place where the Standards Council will get a chance to kind of weigh in and provide your expertise and I think your own views individually as well as a group relating to each of these products. And in our case, it'll simply be the standards that the association has produced. The Professional Development Council will look at the different professional development programs. The Publishing Professional Council will look at the publications and so forth. And once we get that qualitative feedback, we will take that along with the quantitative feedback, and then there's sort of a calculation we do, and it ends up mapping it. That there's a chart. It's a little bit complex because it's ostensibly kind of three-dimensional. It took us a little bit while to figure it out. But the idea is that, and I'm oversimplifying this, it kind of, based on how the calculation comes out between the two types of scores, ends up in a quadrant on this graph, and then there's some suggestions about, so this product ended up in this quadrant, this is how you could approach it. Like, it's got high value, for example, high strategic value, but it's low performing, so you could do it. You could do this, you could do this, It's low performing and it's got low strategic value, so you might want to consider sunsetting it. So, and I'm moving into the third step here, discuss and share results. So once we do those calculations, we will come back, discuss this internally, but then share that information with each of the councils. And so I will come back with that information about, to the Standards Council. This is looking at our suite of standards and how they sort of ended up on this histogram, this chart, and what quadrants they ended up in and what that means as far as this, in terms of this tool. And so from there, it's a point of discussion. And really talking, and this is where as a council, discuss sort of what these results mean, what are perhaps the implications of that, and then what kind of decisions do we want to recommend to the association moving forward about, if a particular set of standards, for example, ended up suggesting it wasn't particularly useful or high performing, does the association want to maintain them? Do they actually want to sunset them? Do they want to revise them? And I think this connects, so that obviously takes us to the blue step, decision to maintain, revise, or sunset. And then subsequently, once we kind of get through this inventory and evaluation process, there's a supplemental process that we're going to construct that is really, the idea is to develop some kind of framework and guidelines that as new ideas for programs or products and services are developed, this framework will have criteria, like how can we evaluate this? What are the kind of questions to go into this, taking into account the association, its position, its resources, its strategic direction, and that particular framework and guideline will be used by, we're not quite sure how this will work just yet, but the concept is that once that is put into place, that the group that evaluates anything new based on this new framework and guideline will be a combination of members and staff. My educated guess is that that group would involve the councils in some way. Right, we haven't quite figured the details on that yet, but that's several months down the line. So that's sort of the, as simple as I can make it, snapshot of what's here. Does it make as much sense as it can at this point? I know it's a little, it's complex and it's kind of at a high level, but
Yeah.
I hope you sort of understand.
I think that makes sense, John. I think that's a clear trajectory to me.
Yeah.
I would go along with Richard also in thinking back over past few years that I've been on the now called Professional Council, and the discussion that's gone back and forth about what we have and what we need. And I think inventory towards looking towards new product development as needed is a structure that really I think will help TESOL overall to have a clearer direction. I agree.
Yeah. This is Sylvia again. Thank you, John, for this. You made it very colorful on the slide and very eloquent in the explanation. I just wanted to point out that what I particularly like about this process is how many different stakeholders get to participate, you know, in different moments, right? Coming in now, the professional councils have a couple of moments when they can participate, and I think it sounds like a very, very good plan.
Yeah. This is Natalie. I agree with you, Sylvia. I think it's a very comprehensive one, and it's done in a very reasoned way.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's very transparent.
I think that's the goal. I think that it's interesting. Just my personal observation is that this idea for this came about, I think, somewhat independently from the governance restructuring process that has occurred. Yet when it sort of evolved, my personal observation was like, I think this actually fits very nicely with the new council structure, and that the transition the association has taken from the committees to the councils, and the idea of the councils being more strategically involved and providing that expertise seems to mesh well with the concept behind this process. So it's sort
Absolutely. Right. This process shows that ideal came to, became a reality right here.
Right.
I couldn't agree more.
So that's sort of the, it's the sort of illustration conceptually. And so this next slide, and this is adapted from the materials, in terms of the evaluation piece component, where I mentioned there was like a quantitative and qualitative elements to it, the three facets of that evaluation it's around these three areas, and these are the definitions, and this is adapted from the material we've taken. It's from attractiveness, position, and competition. And there's a series of questions for each that, let me see, I don't have on the slides the more details of that, but that's something we will share once we get to that step in the process. But that is, for example, and this is an oversimplified example, the question of like position and competition, I think those are very realistic questions that the input from the council I think would be crucial, where we may have an existing program or product or an idea for one, and that question of, is the association in the best position to offer this, and what is the sense of competition? And there may be, I think there may be very real ideas or examples that we may look at to be like, this sounds like a really neat idea. The association may be in a pretty good position, position to this, but there's a lot of competition out there. Is this you know, should the association spend its resources, as nice as it sounds, is this, you know, a good way for the association to spend its resources, you know?
Yeah.
Or maybe something where, and this is, I think, the kind of, you know, again, for the feedback for the council, to be like, you know what, there are others who do this, but if the association does it, you know, it kind of, because of the position of the association, it should enter this area and even though it would be competitive, the association will be in a very good position to compete, and it would be wise investment.
Yeah, and John, that was exactly what we had to discuss when Reza and I were on the committee for the short-term standards, creating short-term standards. That was one of the things that we talked about quite a bit. The competition issue, whether or not it was worth TESOL's effort to do it and at what level.
Yeah. Having sort of used some of those standards on a sort of a junket to South America recently, I think that this particular area, dealing with the short-term assessment and the short-term standards, yeah, that seems to me to be an area that has quite a bit of room for exploration. That the guidebook that you were talking about there, that's very useful, but it's just the number of programs, the short-term program, and how it's defined and how they operate in these various markets. That's something that would be, I think, very useful for TESOL to maybe even look a little more closely at.
Yeah, we talked about it a lot.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah.
I have a question too here.
This is Jane. I just, where would you put things like it's appropriate, it's research and evidence-based, it's current with ESSA or Common Core? Where would those kinds of things go?
Yeah.
Sounds like.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
In a way, it sounds like, Jane, those questions you have, some of them would fit in different categories listed here in terms of position, you know, as a resource in the marketplace in terms of standards, and you know, I think what you're saying might go in all three categories and not specifically in one. But I'll turn it to John. I'm turning it to John because John's worked on this and I have not. So.
Yes, I'm just trying to get my hands on the physical document, which, oh, here we go. So these here, that's a very good question, Jane. So these are just the categories, the three, there's a subset of questions in each category.
Okay, so yeah, they will come up perhaps with the things I mentioned.
That's what it sounded like to me too, Jane.
Okay.
And I think in a lot of cases, all three would be critical.
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so to provide just a little bit more detail narratively, so for example, under the first part of the evaluation, which is on attractiveness, there's a series of it's basically sort of a rating scale, and so the first question is, what is the overall strategic value of the particular program or product, and how well does it align or support the vision or strategic plan?
Okay, that goes back to TESOL. I would want another one that says, how well does it support the profession and the needs of English learners, or what we know about research and best practice of English learners, to shift it so it's not all about what we gain. But maybe I don't know marketing and all that, so don't necessarily listen to me. I'm throwing out things.
Well, there are multiple questions, and that question is included among them.
Oh, right.
Jane, this is Judy again. I also think, listening to you and thinking about my TESOL hat and my professional hat, I think that when you look at this framework, and of course we don't have all the questions, the value to the, and appeal to the association has two sides to it. It has the appeal and value to the association in terms of product and service, but it also needs to consider the membership and the profession at large. And I'm sure that the people who formed this really did that. And, you know, we're just looking at a brief outline. And I'm sure that they consider that. I mean, having been involved in TESOL for longer than I care to indicate, you know, that's always been what TESOL does. They look inward and they look outward.
Yes, in fact, one of those questions under attractiveness is, does the program or product serve an important and ongoing need relevant to the field?
Yes, yes, okay.
Because I do want to just be clear, the purpose is not simply to evaluate based on financial conditions. That is not, and I mean, it cannot be overstated enough, that is not the single lens that this is viewed through. That's why we like this particular tool. I know you're only seeing kind of the top level of it, is that certainly, yes, there's a question relating to resources, but attractiveness and position, because quite frankly, and I'll let me qualify this, my personal opinion, and you know, please push back if you feel otherwise, in terms of position for the field, I mean, standard TESOL is like in the position period to set standards for the field. So I would think that in terms of the position questions related to standards, it pretty much rates very highly. Now, depending upon what standards we're talking about, there may be other factors that impact that. And I think it's very important, and this is something that that is the bigger question. It's really ultimately for the board to consider, is that as the association moves forward and looking at all its inventory of programs and products and services, there are those that are very relevant and important and strategic for the field that need to be supported, that aren't necessarily there as they're not developed with a sense of revenue in mind, but really are strategically important for the association in the field. And
I couldn't agree more, John. Yeah.
I mean, that's totally important. And then you know, then it's the question moving forward is, how do you balance those needs with the other needs of the association?
Yeah.
You know, and I think if I might use an example, I appreciated when Natalie and Reza were talking about the work they did with the short-term certificate standards and the questions of position and competition. One of the activities that prior to the launch of that project, the board had a lot of discussions about in the area of short-term TESOL and TEFL programs, what could the association do? And so this was going back a few years ago. The board actually, they appropriated some funds that we brought in a research firm to do some market research that looked at these questions. It's part of the initial question the board was looking at the time was around the area of accreditation for short-term programs. And the final, after many months of research, of market research, the final report to the board pointed to the fact that the association could do a lot to help this area of the field and help individuals who are pursuing short-term programs, such as developing standards and other resources. But the question of accreditation was a very complex one, and because of what in that particular sector, there is already many kinds of programs that are in the accreditation arena. It was very competitive already, and that any accreditation program typically takes a very long time and a very heavy investment to get off the ground. So that it was an area of, in this case, they felt that it was an area of high risk, so that maybe the investment in the accreditation program it would have been a very high-risk kind of investment for the association, whereas the investment in the standards that would be needed anyways, that would be something more useful. So the board decided, let's invest in the standards, let's move forward in there, and table the accreditation program question for now.
John, that being said, thank you for bringing up this issue of accreditation, because I think in reflecting on some of the things that we've recently, or that I was recently involved with in terms of the use of the short-term program standards, what I noticed was that there are now a large number of accrediting agencies that are being formed, some relying on various standards. I'm sure you're aware of the ones that there's one particular group of agencies in South America, and I'm not sure exactly to what extent our council or TESOL, and this might be going off into a completely different direction, but I do notice that these accrediting bodies are popping up and accrediting these short-term programs. And I'm not sure exactly about the ethical guidelines involved in many of the cases. I was right in the middle of a really difficult time, sort of representing what I believe to be professional ethics and professional norms, and how short-term standards such as the one that the TESOL should be involved with, how those should be appropriately used, and how. And I was seeing actually applications in a very, well, in a way that would be very counter to what I think most of us in our profession and most of us in the association would want to see. So, you know, the fact that it was tabled, I'm just wondering, you know, this framework here may also imply that we need to revisit the accreditation matter on, you know, in that, yeah. That's it.
But this is Natalie again. We had some really interesting conversations about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I imagine you would, because I was involved directly with several organizations where they were not used. I mean, the tool and the guide, the book that you developed or you were working with there, I think was in some cases being well, not necessarily used the way you would have envisioned it to be used. That's putting it in pretty, you know, pleasant terms. And maybe I need to speak with you and the rest of the committee members here, or the council members, about this when we meet face to face. Yeah.
Okay. Is this something on the agenda for the convention?
Yeah, probably wouldn't be a bad idea. That's okay. Yeah.
All right, well, I think just moving on, because I want to keep respect everyone's time. So this is the sort of general timeline we're looking at. We're little, you know, to be honest, we're a little bit behind. We're not quite. We'd hoped to have the inventory piece done last month. We're not quite there yet, but hopefully by the end of this month we'll have the inventory element done. And so the goal is that over the next month, in February, is when the evaluation would take place. And so for that, as I've mentioned, there's two components to that evaluation. One is more quantitative, which staff will handle, and then there's the more qualitative piece, which is where the council would come in. So my goal, our collective goal, and my goal specifically, would be able to then you know, by the beginning of February, come back to the council with basically it's a very a straightforward question, and like say this is the list we're looking at, the particular products, the standards products, and we would and I'll work with Judy and Richard and Sylvia to figure out maybe the best process to handle this, but invite the council members to say, looking at, for example, the TESOL, the short-term certificate program standards that we've just been talking about, you know, have one or two questions around those facets, those dimensions of attractiveness, position, and competition, and have your feedback on that for each of the individual products that are named, so that ideally in March we can by the time we come to the convention, we'll have had a chance as staff to do the calculations, do the plotting on the diagram, so when we meet in Seattle in late March, I can actually have those results and explain what they mean and begin that discussion. I don't think we will be able to have enough time at that one meeting to cover everything, but to start that discussion. And then subsequently, the goal is May and June, or roughly in that time frame. As staff, we will develop this sort of new framework that will be put in place for any sort of criteria and guidelines that will be used to evaluate new ideas for products. So that's, again, just sort of a high-level view of the timeline we're looking at. We are a little bit behind, but hopefully by early next month I can come back and have the information ready for next steps. Okay?
That's good.
Sounds good.
Yep, sounds great.
So speaking of the convention, do you want me to pick this piece up?
Oh, yeah, I could go over it. I'm sorry.
Or maybe I was supposed to, sorry. I forget what.
That's okay. You know what, John, I'm sorry, because I was looking to the bottom for numbers on the slides and I don't see numbers. So
Sorry about that.
That's okay. It's okay. That's fine. Please, go ahead.
Okay, so I think this was included in the information for, especially for all the new members, were sent. So you should, for the convention, of course, the opening keynote for the 2017 convention will be the evening of March 21st, but you'll have a full exciting day of committee meetings and so forth leading into that. Come on, it's exciting, it's great. In the morning, and it's at some point of the next few weeks, you will receive an invitation to was called the Leadership Briefing, is now called the Leadership Forum. That'll be in the morning. It'll be in the Sheraton Hotel, which is the headquarters hotel for the convention. For those of you who are new to the council, this is I think this is the 4th or 5th year maybe we've done this. It's a chance to bring all the councils and the intersection leaders together with the board of directors to have is information shared about what are the big picture programs and projects that are moving forward. There's a chance to have a dialogue and discussion around big issues. I know one of the ideas this year is to have more dialogue. That was some of the feedback that was received last year, that it was a lot of information was shared, but not as much chance for an opportunity for dialogue. So that's one of the things that's being looked at to change this year. And then, of course, the leadership luncheon, which we all will receive invitations to as well, which will also be in the Sheraton. And then the committee meeting will be in the, actually, now this is, I will update this, but it's, so apparently the Washington State Convention Center, which is where, of course, the convention will be, has sort of a supplemental building that has additional meeting rooms, and I think it's simply like the conference center. So our meeting will be there on Tuesday afternoon. But we can easily, as a group, meet in the morning, have lunch together, and then move to the meeting room in the afternoon. And I will again send out the slides and send out this information by email, so you all have it in preparation for the convention. And then 2 more meetings that you probably want to put in your calendars for the convention. The TESOL Town Hall, which is going to be the afternoon of the 22nd in the Sheraton. And then, of course, the end of the day, Friday the 24th, will be the annual business meeting. And I don't have this information now, but I can pull this information together for you in advance. Is the list of, there'll be a couple of standards presentations probably throughout the convention. The update on the revised CAEP standards, as Natalie was inquiring about, so I can pull those details together for you and provide that to you all so you have it. So any questions on that?
I think that it would be nice, if possible, if members of the council had the opportunity and time, once you've given us a list of these particular sessions, to attend them and to acclimate ourselves in with the newest information, as well as be representative of the council. Now, I say that knowing that we all have probably intense and crazy schedules over the conference, but if possible, it's really a very nice idea to be there.
Great. So this slide here, this was, I think, for those of you in the continuing members of the council, this was discussed in the last meeting, some of the ideas for the council activities moving forward. And I think, if I recall correctly, there'd been some discussion about having this as part of the agenda for the meeting at the convention to kind of figure out how the council might move forward in setting these things up. So I guess for all intents and purposes, it's sort of just a reminder.
And I have a question about this. This is Judy. In terms of what you showed us about the process going forward, do we fit into that process because we looked at these things before the process was developed? And so we'll have things to discuss, but will this process, these 3 bullet points, be important as part of that discussion, since there's an overlay from TESOL itself to guide looking forward?
That's a very good question, and I think you're referring to talking about this process here, the strategic evaluation process. Yeah. Yes. I guess the way I see it is that this is kind of like maybe use an example. So we're the first few steps in this process really relate to developing this, evaluating our current inventory in a way. So let's say, for the sake of argument, that the TESOL technology standards, we go through this process and decide, and the council, based on the feedback and the evaluation, looks like these are useful, but we should probably look at revising them. So then, jumping to this, it's sort of like that strategic evaluation process sort of at a higher level, where here, these sort of process elements is now, okay, these are a little bit more programmatic in that, okay, the decision has been made that we want to revise the TESOL technology standards. So, it can look at how do we go about doing that, from looking at the content of it, the process that's involved in terms of how are we going to, do we standardize the process as far as having a draft and how we review that and evaluate that. There is, especially in that second bullet, I see your point, there is definitely some overlap. But I could see where, and I'm thinking off the top of my head, that if at a more strategic level, there's a sense of like, well, this particular set of standards is valid, it may be worth revising, or we want to revise it, but we can get, maybe, for example, we want to set up a more detailed validation process to kind of, let's put this particular set of standards through this more detailed process to get more substantive input to help us answer that question.
Okay.
If that makes sense. I'm kind of brainstorming a little bit here.
Yeah, and I think we'll know better as we get closer, but I didn't quite see how they merge together, but I think we'll understand better as we get closer about how to do that. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, but you're right in that these were what's on this slide here was developed before that strategic evaluation process really was put together.
Mhm.
Yes. Okay. So new business.
Yeah. So I think this is our slide, Richard.
Right.
We're really close to 5 minutes till we close, and one of the things that both our board and our staff liaison wanted to make sure was that the voices that were heard were not only Richard's and mine and the staff and board liaison, but to all of you who are new and those who are continuing, if you had any other input or discussion that you wanted to add in the next 5 minutes. I think that really, just before we even go forward and just open it up, there were lots of really valuable comments that have gone throughout this whole meeting, and it looks like we're going to have a really exciting meeting at TESOL this year, and I look forward to it. And I turn it now to Richard for anything he'd like to add as well. So.
As do I. Looking forward to the meeting. I think we have a lot of work to do. I think that the new business issue should probably encompass both specific things that we think we should look at, and I think it's also possibly an opportunity to think at the enterprise level, what is TESOL about? And we have a new structure here. But what are we doing? We're an important part of the enterprise effort. So I would be interested in hearing what any of the members of this group might have to say about things we might be thinking about, even if they're not overly well-formed ideas. But this is an opportunity to put some general things out here if you'd like to, and things that we might be thinking about, and John might take to other parts of the organization to get input on in the interim before we meet again.
Good point. Thank you.
So is there any questions, additional comments, or feedback? New items to discuss?
No, this is Natalie. I just want to say I'm looking forward to being part of the council and all the work that you've been doing.
Hi, this is Andrea. I just had one question. Could you kind of explain what the process is going to be for participating in the evaluation of these products, standards products? I understood that you're doing this in February, but I would really like to know what you're planning for the process. Is this going to be a survey, or are we going to be working in groups, or each of us will get the standards product?
Yes.
All of
Love that answer.
That is a very, very good question. We haven't quite gotten to that point yet. What I will do is I will follow up with Richard and Judy and Sylvia, and maybe have a conversation with them about how they recommend we move forward. Whether it's for example, as you Andrew, as you suggested, do we sort of assign? Is it a matter of assigning, like, hey, you three council members work on this one, you three council members work on this one? Is it more an open survey that anybody can respond to? The questions themselves, as I'm looking at the document in front of me, are deliberately open-ended. The example is, it'll be simply like, for example, attractiveness. There'll be kind of a description of what attractiveness, the sort of definition per this evaluation, and then it'll be a question, basically say, can you identify some factors that impact attractiveness? And one box says contributing to low attractiveness, one question, and then one box contributing to high attractiveness. So it's, it could be for example, this is looks like it's serves an important sector of the field. There's nothing else like this. That's high attractiveness, low attractiveness. It's low attractiveness. Maybe it's over a decade old. You know, and I think it's so I'm kind of, thinking aloud here. So I think that the actual logistics of that, I think, are still to be determined. But I think what I'd like to work with, as I mentioned, Judy and Richard and Sylvia on that.
Okay. Well, if you could maybe think about, like, when you had to sign up for the council, you sent out a survey about your specific interests, because I think that most of us specialize in certain areas on this council, and I think my feedback on, let's say, the technology standards would probably not be very valuable. I think maybe my expertise would be better on a different standard. So I wonder if you might send out a survey in which we can all indicate that, where would we like to be assigned to, I don't know, just something to think about.
Oh, that's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually a great idea, Andrea. Really cool.
Okay.
I know, Sylvia, you like the technology standard.
I'm in.
Give us some of a general idea of time frame and how much time you expect us to put into it, because that's a fairly short timeline. Yeah. I know, for one, I'm going to be out of the country half of February.
So so looking at it, and I apologize for not having something to kind of display, because we're just about finalizing it. It's basically sort of, as I described, sort of an open-ended, like, short answer question. There is one on attractiveness, one on positioning, and one on competition. It's the same basic kind of question. Here's a description of the concept of competition. What are some of the factors, like, supporting high competition, supporting low competition? And so I think the idea is, okay, so there's three basic questions, and answering those questions for each of the set of standards. And my sense is, in this space, we would probably differentiate between, say, like a set of standards and it's the volume that's produced, and not include necessarily if there was an ancillary volume that was produced connected to those standards. There was like an implementation guide or something. So hopefully it wouldn't take, like, if you were just doing one, maybe 20 minutes, 30 minutes.
Oh, yeah, then it doesn't matter.
But I mean, but I do need to work there. Wait, I definitely do. I don't think we want to make this labor intensive at all.
That was my only concern.
No, but it's important. These are important questions, so I'm glad you're raising them, because it helps us think through, like, how can we make this as simple and straightforward process as possible.
No, it's going to be a good process. I'm glad we'll be part of it.
Absolutely.
Hey, anyone else?
This is Sylvia, and I'd just like to say to welcome the new members again, and to thank everybody for great questions, thought-provoking ideas, and I thought it was an amazing meeting. I took a lot of notes. So I'm looking forward to meeting all the new members in Seattle.
Without volunteering, do we have a secretary to take all our minutes, put them online?
Yeah, that's a good point. Generally, we haven't. I mean, we've done things on short paper and so forth, but that's a good point for this upcoming meeting, to definitely have somebody be a secretary to it. Thank you.
So
And thank
now
you,
that
of
we are
course,
a
John,
council,
and
I'm sorry.
sorry. Just wanted to thank John for putting all these great slides together and helping us through the structure of meeting, and Judy and Richard for leading the discussion as well. Thank you all.
There was, I think, one more. Someone else had a question.
Yeah, I was just wondering if we had to write an annual report.
Yes.
Because when we were like not a council, but when we were before committee, we had to write an annual report every year. Is that something we have to do?
Yeah, I think the answer is yes, but I'm not sure the process has been determined yet. Because thank you for the reminder, Andrea. But one of the shifts in terms of one of the many shifts that have occurred with the move to the council format is that the volunteer year has changed. It used to be from convention to convention, and now it's November 1 to October 31. So that would have an impact of when the reports and the nature of the reports at each point. So my understanding is that that particular question hasn't been fully answered yet.
Okay, thank you.
So stay tuned.
Coming attractions.
Exactly. Exactly.
Sounds like we're at an end, John, unless somebody else has anything to add. We're at, according to California time, we're at 1:37, which is probably 4:37 East Coast time, and I don't know about the rest of the world. So.
Correct.
According to freezing rain time here in the central time zone, it's just about on the weather. Yes, about 3:35. Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you, everyone, and I'll turn it over to John to finalize, to kind of close this out.
Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you, everyone, for dialing in and participating. I think we had looks like we, by my count, about 90+% of the committee members here. So thank you so much, especially for all the new council members. As I mentioned, I will be posting these slides to my TESOL along with a copy of the recording. And as I mentioned at the outset, we will be relying on the My TESOL platform for the communications, because it's a place, it collects and holds everything. So if you experience difficulties with My TESOL, please don't hesitate to reach out to me.
John, I just have one last.
Sure. Rob, you had one more last question?
Yeah, I just want to have one last question, because in for whatever reason, a lot of my TESOL digests and so forth are going into my clutter mail, and I'll see if I can change that through my institution. But is yours? This is not the My TESOL Community Digest. It's a separate message that you send out through My TESOL. I've seen a number of different messages, and I'm not too familiar with My TESOL yet. Maybe that's part of the problem, but I just wanted to make sure that I am aware of the message that you're sending.
Right. So basically, if you log into My TESOL, you'll go under the communities. You'll see the groups you're a part of, like My Communities, and you have the option within each group to adjust the settings so that you either receive it like in digest mode or real time when messages are sent.
I'll take a look at that. I didn't mean to take up the time for the committee. I can always call you as well, but
that's
yeah,
okay.
I'll look at that and make those adjustments.
What I'll do as when we hang up, Rob, is I'll send you the document we have as sort of a FAQ visual guide on like how you can.
Oh, great!
That shows how you can adjust those settings.
Thank you very much. And thanks for hosting me as a new member to the council with everyone. Thank you.
Of course. Great. Well, thank you so much, everybody.
Hi, everybody. Bye. Bye. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
See you in Seattle.
Bye-bye. See you.
Thank you. Bye.